Welcome to Freedom Loves Company on ProgressiveSpirit.net and JohnShuck.com. I'm John Shuck. Freedom Loves Company is broadcast live every Sunday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution.Radio Studio B and slightly edited for podcast and distribution through the Pacifica Radio Network. Freedom Loves Company. That's the name of this radio show. My name is John Shuck, and thank you for listening. Glad to have you on board. This is just my second time around. I was on last week. We had Kevin Barrett on and Tessalina, my two guests. Last hour, I had Mark Taliano. And today, this hour, you get me. What I'm going to do is share some of my essays, sermon-ish kind of things, since this COVID thing started. I'll just share to see to give an idea how much my mind has changed, if it's changed at all. It's amazing how long it's been already. It's been, a year and a half, anyway, and what is happening? That's what we're trying to figure out, isn't it? What is happening? Well, I, by the way, was, and still am, I'm a retired Presbyterian Church USA minister. I was one for 28 years. Left my last congregation in November 2019. I was in Portland. I was started to check out stuff that I guess I wasn't supposed to be checking out. Checking out the Muslim neighbors and making friends with them. And being against these wars. I had a chance to go to Iraq and walk in the 50-mile pilgrimage from Najaf to Karbala, Iraq, in commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, who was killed 1,400 years ago. He and his family, and the pilgrimage is made yearly, and I had a chance to participate in it. It's the largest annual peaceful gathering on planet Earth. Up to 20 million, maybe even 30 million people made that pilgrimage when I was there in 2018. And I had a chance to actually visit his shrine and with the throngs of people touch his shrine over his grave. And it really spoke to me of the need for humanity to unite, regardless of religion and color and everything. And I was so impressed with my new Islamic friends and the resistance that they were doing and the lies they had to overcome, largely from our media. They were the ones in Iraq who actually defeated Daesh and ISIS, faces of their martyrs all along the poles. They gave it up and they went and they were the ones because they were fighting these terrorists. And my whole, a lot of things just changed around for me. And I started to talk about those things with my church. And well, not everybody was happy about that. Because and I didn't really get it until later how indoctrinated people are. And when you mess up the myth that Disneyland gives them, it makes them mad. Anyway, I left. So that relationship ended. And then COVID hit. And I knew something was wrong then. And so that's what I wanted to share with you, just a couple of things that I was writing back then. So now I live in a whole different state and I'm doing a whole different thing. But on March 15th, 2020, this is just like 4 days after they said this is the pandemic. And on that Sunday, all the churches, voluntarily just shut themselves up, at least where I was. And my former church did too. They all did. They all said that we're going to, flatten the curve, which meant, as I understood it then, flatten the curve meant because the volume of illness is going to be so incredibly huge, it's going to overwhelm all the hospitals. So we need to. It wasn't like it was going to stop the spread. It was just going to slow it, flatten it, and so the hospitals wouldn't be overturned. Well, we're still flattening the curve. Year and a half later, and the curve isn't. I don't know what the curve is. Anyway, I wrote this sermon. I didn't have a congregation, so I wrote it and read it on the radio, and you're going to get another dose. A sermon for conspiracy theorists. This was dated March 15th, 2020, the first Sunday. I haven't prepared a sermon since I left my church in November, now that the country is doing virtual church. And since I'm a virtual pastor, I thought I would create a virtual sermon for you to virtually hear. Ephesians 6:12 is the text. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Today is March 15th, 2020. It is Sunday. It's the third Sunday of Lent. Many churches are closed. Many are offering instead, quote, virtual worship. The goal is, of course, not to gather in order to slow the spread of the coronavirus that is now being called a global pandemic. It is this pandemic that made me think about my vocation. I am no longer the pastor of a congregation, yet I still feel like a pastor. I feel the need to be pastoral to somebody. A pastor should say something about our situation from the perspective of the gospel. And so I wrote this on my Facebook page this past week. Remember, I'm writing from March 15th, 2020. I'm no longer the pastor of a congregation. It would be interesting to be one at this time, but still I am a pastor at heart. However, this pandemic shakes out, either with massive death or sickness, or if it fades away, pastoral care is needed, especially as we enter, in the United States at least, unprecedented isolation and grave economic hardship as our economies, especially our individual household economies, are threatened by all the shutdowns. Perhaps we need more than anything a gospel perspective as opposed to the partisan political perspectives that dominate so much of our discourse. Namely, I think we need to come to terms with fear in relation to survival and accepting anything authorities may do, whether illusory or real, that momentarily alleviates that fear. The reality is that we all will die someday. That fear of death must be faced. Life in the gospel is living as if one is ready to die. That, of course, is the gospel's freedom. We live for this moment, for truth, for justice, for love, with courage. When we die as those who go forth to live. I'm not sure what I can offer as a pastor in this unique time for me as a pastor without a church. Perhaps I am at this point an internet pastor. I've been spending my time since leaving my last church reading, researching, and sharing what I learned from others on my Facebook page. It doesn't seem like much, but it's what I do now in this time of my sabbatical. But more, I feel, is coming. There's a lot inside of me that needs to come out. Do know, whether you consider yourself spiritual or not, from whatever philosophy or faith tradition or none, that I will do my best to communicate what I see to be real, as uncomfortable and as controversial as that can be. I will be wrong. I will not see everything. I will get stuck in a deceitful rabbit hole on occasion. But I will seek to explore what is real. From whatever your perspective on philosophy or faith, etc., you're welcome here. I will do my best to be empathetic and hopefully kind as I do that. For those who find what I write and share too objectionable, then peace be with you in your journey. What will not work are attempts to silence me for following my path. I do this, and I still do it as a pastor because I feel called to it, summoned, you might say. I have no idea what is to come for us as a country and as a world. But I know that those guides who are real for me, Jesus and Hussein, are worthy of my trust. Their example and their presence that I feel is stronger, more true, and more real than the enemies of humanity, who I name here often, and who I feel we are summoned to unmask, name, and engage. I guess this is all to say that I'm a pastor even at this moment, a brother in faith to some, a brother in humanity to others, and I'm not afraid of what is to come for us, the human species. But I'm ready and open to do what is to be done this day as a pastor. That's what I wrote a few days ago. And again, I'm reading something that I wrote in March 15th, 2020. And since today is Sunday, March 15th, 2020, I wondered if it might be time to write a sermon. I started with the text for today, Romans 5:1-11, but my sermon didn't seem to go anywhere, and although this line sticks out, as it always does, Paul writes, that we boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint. I decided not to write a sermon, but I wanted to write something, and there's much in me that needs to come out about so many things. So much suffering is now and is on the way for so many people, for the whole of humanity. The most vulnerable, the elderly, the sick, will be on the front lines of this virus. If exponential infection proceeds, as it seems to be doing, perhaps millions could die around the world, including the United States. My prayers and my gratitude are with nurses and doctors and first responders who are caring for the sick. As Presbyterian pastor Fred Rogers, who we know as Mr. Rogers, said, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. I'm taking precautions, not so much for myself, but so I don't spread the virus if I am infected. We've been told that we can be contagious for weeks before we develop any symptoms. So I'm self-isolating with my wife and dogs. I don't know what this is. I have no predictions regarding this virus. In this regard, I'm going with the herd, but with a suspicious mind. I could repeat the information we get from the mainstream media on our screens, but you know that as well as I do, possibly better, because I rarely watch it. My intuition tells me, as well as what I have read and seen from the people I trust, and from my understanding of recent history, is that something sinister is afoot. I was asked if this is from God as a test. That is a question for which one can never be certain, as are all questions about the workings of God. But I answered that I didn't think it was from God, yet in many respects this is, as is all of life itself, a test. Is this some random freak of nature, such as the mainstream media tell us? Is this from eating a wild bat in a market in China? My answer is, again, I think not. That answer puts me in the category of conspiracy theorist. A conspiracy theorist, in the pejorative meaning of the phrase, is someone who doesn't believe what she or he is supposed to believe. Aristotle is said to have said that the mark of an educated mind is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So yes, I entertain many thoughts of conspiracy, but I accept only those that are true. Aristotle might have been a conspiracy theorist. The quote-unquote conspiracy theory that I entertain in this regard is that this pandemic is a combination of bioweapons/psyop to push through a variety of agendas. Whether it was unleashed in a calculated way or by an accidental escape from the laboratory is a larger unknown. People I trust will entertain this theory, and given that biological weapons are being manufactured all over the world under the auspices of governments and their militaries, it seems logical that that would be the first theory any thinking person would explore. But the mainstream media, a megaphone for the powerful, will not entertain this logical theory, and instead it promotes the theory that this virus is a product of nature and was transferred to humans by wild bats. This is most likely a cover story. The Hollywood film Contagion is a blueprint for this story. The media cannot be trusted for the truth of what is really happening. And I say this with confidence. One piece of evidence will suffice for my view of the media. At 5:20 in the afternoon on September 11th, 2001, World Trade Center Tower Building 7 was imploded by controlled demolition into its own footprint in less than 7 seconds. Mainstream media has covered up this story to this day on behalf of powerful agencies that are supposed to supply truth but do the opposite, at least on this matter, such as NIST, the National Institute for Science and Technology. The mainstream media, by this continued cover-up, shows that it has lost all credibility regarding anything of importance. Obviously, what happened on September 11th, 2001, and especially who is responsible, is of utmost importance to the human race. Those who really did it are still in control of the world today and are protected by their propaganda arm, their own media outlets. My working theory is that COVID-19 was created in a laboratory for the purposes of mayhem by the usual suspects and unleashed at this particular time and manner for a variety of reasons. Those reasons I do not know, but I suspect these reasons have to do with population manipulation and control for the benefit of the world's elite. Many people I trust, and those I don't, have a number of views regarding what these agendas might be, and I find it healthy to entertain them per Aristotle. As these new agendas are rolled out in the coming months and years, we will know, or at least those who follow Aristotle's dictum will know. The big question is whether or not the populace will know, and with knowing, will free themselves from slavery to the elites. I have decided that question is not mine to answer. I can only leave that to God. My calling or summons is to tell what I think is real to the best of my ability. That said, I do believe that there are people who have a hunch that something isn't what the mainstream media says it is in regards to all of this. Many are drawn to what conspiracy theorists entertain without admitting it to others or perhaps even themselves that these people may be right to question what we're told by official outlets. These curious people contain a spark in their consciousness that is waiting for ignition. That is my hope. But again, it's not my business. I just do my job. And my job these days is assisted by an increasing freedom from concern about what others think. Conspiracy theorists do suffer. They suffer from ridicule and censorship. They suffer from loneliness and from marginalization. Some suffer actual harm from what the author of Ephesians calls the rulers, the authorities, the cosmic powers of this present darkness, the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Conspiracy theorists are like Old Testament prophets. No one liked them then, and no one likes them now. But as Paul says in today's lectionary text, we also boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not disappoint. Well, maybe I did write a sermon after all. A sermon for conspiracy theorists, and for conspiracy theorists in the making. The world needs you. You are blessed, and you are a blessing. Those who believe what they are supposed to believe and who follow what the mainstream media says to believe will not be happy with me, and I'm at peace with that. There are plenty of pastors for them. But there are not many pastors for those who are not in the mainstream. Really, I'm not a pastor in my understanding of the word because I haven't not been called to a congregation. But as a fellow seeker of what is true, I will hopefully be a fellow traveler to you should you decide this lonely path is yours as well. At that, I will heartily say amen. And then I put a P.S. For further research, I recommend exploring Kevin Barrett, Anthony Hall, Veterans Today, The Corbett Report, Philip Giraldi, Scott Bennett, Helen Biniski, Francis Boyle, Spiro Skouras, Joseph Mercola, Whitney Webb, Larry Romanoff, Peter Koenig, Ron Paul, David Icke. That was a sermon I wrote and just preached on the radio on March 15th, 2020, when the churches were just first shut down. And so at that time, I was still thinking, oh, this is a real thing. It's a virus. It's coming to get us. But I wasn't sure, but I also knew it may have been something that could really hurt us, but it was definitely planned and planted. It took about a week for me to realize that this virus wasn't going to be as deadly as it said, as they said it was going to be. Now, I'm not going to give the next sermon right now because that's probably too much religion for one day, but I will save it and have it for later. I'm going to share this one. This one I wrote a couple weeks later, March 28th, 2020. By the way, you can find this stuff on my website if you want, johnshuck.com. And if you're just joining us, what's going on here? This is Freedom Loves Company. It's a radio show from 8 to 10 Eastern on Studio B Like I say, my name is John Shuck, and this is Revolution Radio, and you can contribute to Revolution Radio and keep freedom of speech going. Don't we need it? Okay, this is what I wrote March 28th, 2020. It's called COVID the Movie, the sequel to 9/11. Something is terribly, terribly wrong. I know you can sense it. I know there's a part of you that knows something isn't right. You know you are being deceived, but you cannot bring yourself to admit it. So instead, you fight the enemies presented to you. Trump, Pelosi, Democrats, Republicans, and you take up sides in predictable ways. But that is a sideshow. It is a distraction. The screens are showing us a perception that is not real. If you are old enough to remember 9/11, you remember the nonstop media coverage that provided us with the culprits early on and never let up telling us who was responsible. Images of airplanes crashing into the Twin Towers again and again and again, surrounded by sideshow stories about politicians saying stupid things and other politicians saying what an outrage these other politicians were. Yet all the politicians agreed who it was and what we needed to do. We got the message. We were helpless. We were under attack by these jihadist terrorists, and only two things could save us. One, massive military expenditures and endless wars abroad, and two, giving up our constitutional rights at home for the promise of security. 9/11 was a movie. We were directed to look at the airplanes, when in fact the buildings were blown to kingdom come and airplanes had nothing to do with it. The whole thing was fake. Real people died, of course. Those people were not extras. We were all in this movie, but it was a movie. Just this past week, the University of Alaska Fairbanks published its final report showing that the National Institute of Science and Technology, NIST, lied and continues to lie about the demolition of World Trade Center Building 7. Independent researchers have shown for years the 9/11 movie to be so filled with holes that it cannot stand up to critical scrutiny. The 9/11 movie makers answered that, of course. The researchers are dismissed as, quote, conspiracy theorists, and everyone laughs with derision as if on cue. Well, I'm grateful for these researchers. Their work will matter to future generations who will look back at us in disbelief that our generation could have been so hypnotized. Their work also matters to me in the present because it is real, and what's real matters. 9/11, the movie, is finishing its run. The toll of death and destruction has been immense. Now the sequel. COVID was released in October 2019, with the first scenes taking place in China. The COVID movie is about a virus that has infected the human population because of a wild bat. Seriously. This virus has traveled the globe and is so terrifying that governments have shut down everything. In the United States and Western nations, whose people are the intended audience for this movie, we are now on what I describe as near lockdown. Schools are shut down. Businesses have shut down. Even places of worship have closed. You cannot be within 6 feet of another human. We humans are in the way. We're good for nothing except to be shut up and isolated in our homes. Normally, humans help each other through crises. Not during COVID. In this movie, we are only saved by following orders to isolate, even if you're not sick, and reporting on those who we think are not following orders. COVID the movie broadcasts 24/7 on all screens, large and small, We were told that the culprit is a natural virus, and that is not to be questioned. Those who do question are conspiracy theorists. Cue derision, hostility, disgust. This virus has mysterious properties in that people can be contagious for weeks without any symptoms. And when symptoms do develop, they are the same as a cold or flu, except it is really bad for some. It's so dangerous that no human can be in contact with each other or the virus will spread. Each day, COVID the movie provides body counts and many, many images of people in hazmat suits and lab coats. Who is dying? And of what exactly? How do we know that these deaths have anything to do with a virus, or with our response to it, or with our behavior? We don't. We don't know. We are only told. COVID, the movie, is the only movie playing. And while it plays on all screens all the time, things are happening in the real world. Laws are being passed. Wall Street has been given trillions of dollars. 5G is being constructed. Surveillance gadgets are being used. We are being watched every move. This is the coolest experiment you can imagine. Shut people up in their homes, fill them with fear, screw them over. That is COVID, the movie. COVID, the movie, has nothing to do with a virus any more than 9/11. The movie had anything to do with hijackers. Look here, virus, virus, fear, fear. Meanwhile, we destroy everything you hold dear over here and substitute it with a fake existence in front of your television and smartphone. The same people whose same media brought you 9/11 are bringing you COVID. Let's be clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I am not saying there may not be massive amount of death. There may be. Regardless of what is being called COVID-19, there are plenty of biological and chemical agents all over the world, ready to be released whenever these movie makers want to release them. They can release them whenever and wherever they want. They can target different populations. These concoctions have been released throughout history. The U.S. government has done it to its own citizens. The technology gets better and better, or should I say more and more sinister. The point of COVID the movie is to engineer enough death and suffering, or the perception and threat of death and suffering, as necessary to get through the needed agenda items. One of the agenda items is to see how well the movie makers can succeed at controlling us. I think they must be happy so far with the results. They're taking notes for next time. COVID is not about a virus. 9/11 was not about Al-Qaeda terrorists. This is about control. You are being controlled. This is what I'm saying. And you really kind of know it, don't you? You know something isn't right. I'm telling you to go with that feeling, explore it, and research this. We don't know what's really going on. Nothing can be trusted. Certainly not anything you get from the screens. But there are people who are like you, who have the same feeling that this isn't right. They are acting on that feeling. Some have been exploring what is behind the movies and have been doing so for a long time. Others are just beginning to awaken. I tell you this not to convince you of anything, but to assure you that if you feel that something is terribly, terribly wrong about what we are being told, you're not alone. Know that and be empowered. That was something I wrote March 28th, 2020. COVID the movie, the sequel to 9/11. Not a lot of people in my circle appreciated it because my circles have kind of changed. I've moved away. I was definitely mainstream, on the edge of mainstream, and then I've pretty much lost all those folks. A few hang on, I think, because they're curious. They watch, but they don't, who knows? And so I started to get a lot of flack on my Facebook page, and I finally realized I had to put a little disclaimer. And so I wrote this. It's called Free Speech. This was April 7th, 2020. Said I needed to post this on my Facebook page. I will link to it as the need arises. Oh, well, before I read this, I should tell you about my Facebook. I'm back on. Oh, my God, the gods have given me pardon. And after 30 days in purgatory, they have opened myself up again, and I can go and comment on Facebook. I'm just so tickled. All right, free speech. Dear friends, a couple of thoughts. First, I will exercise my First Amendment right to free speech. Second, in this exercise of free speech, I may share information and make opinions that are in opposition to the official narrative, especially regarding COVID, 9/11, and other crimes against humanity that are ongoing. I believe this sharing of information and opinion are essential for a free society. Doing so will result in attacks by various means by those who do not want this information or my opinion shared. These arrows of attack include attempts to shame me, or report me, or psychoanalyze me, belittle me, or the authors of the information I share, bring up my family, call me names, and so forth. It is all rather unseemly. It is also ineffective. These arrows that are shot, whether the shooter knows what she or he is doing or not, is done on behalf of the enemy of free speech. I will defend myself, and I will defend true seekers, who I call warriors. I may block, unfriend, delete, respond, not respond, on my own terms and in my own time, however I see fit. It's my page. I never go to someone else's page and tell them what they cannot say. I seek to follow the rule, do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. The people who I really address in all of my posts are searchers. You know who you are, and I know who you are. You may make comments, and when you do, you make them as a searcher, not as an attacker. Bless you. You are the ones who know something is terribly, terribly wrong with these top-down government shutdowns and actually explore the information shared here, make your own evaluation of it, and search on your own. Godspeed to you. We live in interesting times. This too shall pass. So that's a year ago, over a year ago. I'm writing this kind of stuff. April 7th, that was 2020. I guess now it's been a year and a half, and we're feeling that we're in this for the long haul. Yeah, and those days are gone in which I actually have any communication successfully, I think, with those who are in the cult, the COVID cult. I mean, it really is that, isn't it? It's like a crazy mixed up religion that's just mesmerized most of the population, and so now I kind of just speak to others, I guess, but I'm still kind of in the mainstream a little bit. So sometimes I think, well, there's still people might be listening in, just say what we say and get on with it. What else do I want to share with you? No, not that one. Let's see. Another day, maybe. Oh, this one? Yeah. Okay. My name is John Shuck, by the way. This is Freedom Loves Company on Revolution Radio. 8 to 10 Eastern Time every Sunday. And then I put these on my podcast page, too, these hour-long podcasts. And I send them out to Pacifica Radio and see if any of those stations pick it up. I guess that's my one connection with the mainstream. All right. COVID-19 is fake. Warriors needed. I wrote this April 3rd. Yeah, this is the one that really got eyebrows. This is one that kept getting me banned on Facebook. Let's begin with this truism. It's a truism that has been falsely attributed to Aristotle, but it's still clever. The mark of an educated mind is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Say that again. The mark of an educated mind is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. So let's entertain 3 thoughts. 1. COVID-19 is a natural virus. This virus came from eating a bat in a filthy seafood market in Wuhan, China. Rather than just get sick from eating bad food, as what always normally happens, this case was different. A virus transferred itself from the bat to the human that is unique in its terror. This novel virus has spread worldwide and is killing people. You can be contagious with this virus even if you don't have symptoms. Symptoms, when they do arise, are the same as a cold or flu, except it's bad for some, especially those who are sick already from something else. The only way to stop its spread is to isolate and lock down every human being. Jobs are lost forever. The economy is crashing. Rights that free societies have fought and died for, privacy, worship, commerce, assembly, speech, are taken away in order to stop the spread of this virus. These decisions are made and enforced from the top down in every government. These decisions are communicated 24/7 from media outlets who are reinforced by transgovernmental bureaucrats and scientists who work for them, for example, WHO. This thought is the accepted view. It is not an entertained thought. It is absolutely accepted. It is promulgated and defended with force. Number 2. COVID-19 is a bioweapon. There is a virus, and it was created in a laboratory. It was released accidentally or on purpose by spies and militaristic psychopaths from one or several governments. This view is not accepted by the established Western media, but it gets some attention in alternative media and makes for increased tensions between governments. The government lockdowns and other precautions regarding stopping the spread of this weaponized virus, however, are often still supported by those who entertain this thought. So thought 1, COVID-19 is a natural virus. Thought 2, COVID-19 is a bioweapon. Third thought to entertain, COVID-19 is a fiction. There is no virus. All the above actions and more are the result of what has been intended by transgovernmental entities and personalities that control governments around the world. The lockdowns are not only futile, but an attack on humanity. Therefore, humanity must do everything in its power to become informed and defend itself against these attacks. This thought is not accepted by officials and most people, and those who explore it and express their explorations are recipients of censorship in a variety of ways. I seek to follow this truism, and I entertain all 3 thoughts. I can't say that I know absolutely which thought is correct. With so much at stake, censoring any thought before humanity can discuss it and make rational decisions is ultimately destructive, not only to our freedom, but to our very survival. Only entities that seek to control others censor the exploration and expression of thought. If the thought I am entertaining is correct, or even probably or possibly correct, we don't have much time, and we need radical action. So one thought has been capturing my attention as of late. In fact, it's captured my attention so much so that I find it to be the most logical and promising thought of the 3. And that thought is that COVID-19 is a fiction. I'm going to offer some reasons on why I entertain that thought and what it might mean for our response as a human race. Obviously, the thought we accept is critical to the response that we make. This is not simply an exercise. What we do in the next few weeks and months could be the most important things we do for the future of our species for decades, perhaps centuries to come. And now again, I'm a step back. I'm reminding I wrote this April 3rd, 2020. COVID is fake, warriors needed. This was my opinion then. So I hope you will entertain this thought that COVID-19 is a fiction, and by doing so, challenge your acceptance of the dominant thought that has been forced upon you, that your government is acting in your interest to stop a virus. It's too dangerous for your life simply to accept that. Precedents. We've been fooled and manipulated by governments and the powers that control them on many previous occasions. One example is 9/11. As I wrote in my shorter piece, COVID the Movie, the sequel to 9/11, 9/11 was a movie, a fiction. We were told that al-Qaeda terrorists with hijacked airplanes brought down 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers and put a hole in the Pentagon. This is fiction. The buildings and the people inside them were blown to kingdom come. The hijacked airplanes are the heart of the fiction. The official fiction has been proven beyond doubt to be false by curious people who have entertained other thoughts from those their governments told them to think. The COVID fiction is much larger in scope and effect than the 9/11 fiction. I'm finding that many 9/11 skeptics embrace the official COVID story and think there really is a virus. Why is that? Well, my hunch is that many have not been able to see 9/11 as larger than the act of one government or two. 9/11 is an inside job. Well, I entertain the thought that 9/11 was an act of the same trans-governmental entities and personalities that are to blame for COVID. We could call them the permanent government or a secret cult. Let's give them a biblical name, archons. All right, the media. Few things may be more important than understanding that our established media, including much of the alternative media, is all of a piece. Hollywood, news, network shows, print, cable, social media, all media outlets support and promote the official fiction of 9/11 to this day as accepted fact. The same media that lied and lies to us about 9/11 is telling us what to think and do about COVID. The media could not be trusted then about that. Why would anyone who knows this trust them now about this? The media is truly the eye of the enemy. Is it a surprise that we only communicate to one another via this media's technology now? We can't even meet. During the lockdown, the screens are blasting us with the only accepted view day and night. The screens are our constant babysitter. Everything the media says, and doesn't say, serves a purpose, and it is not the purpose of humanity. It serves the archons. We must take our spear and thrust it into this eye. That's the thought I entertain. This means, of course, that nothing, no numbers, no images, no stories, no facts, no figures, no governmental bureaucrats, including presidents, politicians, or scientists in lab coats can be trusted to say anything that is true. Why? Because they all say it through the media. That means that nothing, not one thing, coming from them can be considered to be true unless verified independently. What in the official story of COVID can be verified? That there's a virus? No, we're told there is. That people around the world are dying of it? No, we're told this is the case. That locking down is the only thing that can save us? No, we're told we must. Recently, the established media has been reporting that hospitals are overrun with COVID patients. People are dying of COVID, panic, fear. What will we do? Curious human beings visited these same hospitals, such as Elmhurst in Queens, New York, and all over the world to see if this is true. And video after video by these citizen journalists show #empty hospitals. The panic we witness on the news is fiction. In fact, it appears that some of these fictions are staged for the media. Why would the established media do that if for no other reason than to promote the fiction of a killer virus and thus promote control by our governments? This control does not come from just your government or mine. These fictions are promulgated throughout the world by trans-governmental entities to the governments they control. The virus. Trust the scientists, we're told. Well, that's just silly. Scientists who work for governments and other agencies have rarely proved themselves to be trustworthy when it matters. Should we trust scientists who created the atom bomb? Should we trust the scientists who tested the hydrogen bomb and studied its effect on human guinea pigs in the Bikini Islands? Should we trust the scientists who make biological weapons or design killer drones? Should we trust the scientists at NIST who said and still say that a 47-story skyscraper collapsed into its own footprint in less than 7 seconds because of office fires? Should we trust scientists who find a disease to fit the drug the pharmaceutical industry invents through its scientists? Should we trust scientists and doctors whose training is funded by these same pharmaceutical companies? Scientists, like everyone else, work for those who control them. So should we trust scientists who say through the media that COVID-19 is a deadly virus? Should we trust scientists who say that a bat transferred this virus to humans in a seafood market in China? Not unless they can prove it independently, and that has not been done. In fact, independent scientists, apart from institutions and media, have been saying something quite different. Should they be automatically trusted because they are independent? Of course not. But when so much is at stake, it would be wise for you, dear human, to entertain what they're saying and make up your own mind, especially when the scientists promoted through the screens have a very, very ugly track record. A video created by Dr. Andrew Kaufman captured my attention. He's a medical doctor whose specialty is psychiatry, but in his video he offers his credentials and he explains what he thinks COVID-19, or what is being called COVID-19, really is. He introduced me to a new word, exosomes. The takeaway is that what is called a virus is really our own immune system fighting an outside attack. I'm no scientist, but I know the difference between those who peddle fiction on behalf of powerful agendas and those who are true searchers for truth. I hope that other independent scientists will examine this video and this work as well. The citizen doctor video and the citizen journalist videos of people showing us empty hospitals have made that mustard seed of doubt regarding the official version grow like a weed. I want now to explore more what is really going on, and I hope you will as well. The enforcement of the official version has dire consequences for the future of humanity. If this story is fake, then humanity must revolt or face the new reality of slavery. This is no exaggeration. I'm going to say that again. If this story is fake, then humanity must revolt or face the new reality of slavery. The main weapon used so far against humanity, as I entertain this thought, is the media. So far, everything has been announced by the media and its actors, and the mass of humanity has acquiesced. We've been indoctrinated to trust blindly those in authority and its media, thinking it is on our side. The first attack has been an attack by the media. The first casualty of war is truth. The first attack in this war on humanity is the huge lie of a killer virus, a pandemic, that in itself has brought over 3 billion people in the world to their knees. But there's a real weapon that perhaps has already been used in many places, including in Wuhan, China, and is being constructed throughout the world. 5G. A citizen journalist in London found workers putting 5G putting in 5G while the city is locked down. This is happening all over the world. While we're shut up and locked down, 5G is being rolled out. 5G citizen journalists and activists have been showing us that 5G is a killer. It's also a prison. It's also torture. I'm entertaining the thought that when, or if, that depends on us, 5G goes up and is activated, humanity will be under complete and total control. I could be wrong. Maybe 5G is really a harmless, cool way to download movies fast, talk to our toaster, and impress our friends with 3D holograms. Then why is it being rolled out in secret? Why has there not been any testing for health effects? What can it really do? I want answers to those questions now, before they put 5G in all of our hospitals and elementary schools and neighborhoods, don't you? Side note, Wuhan, China, a city larger than New York, by the way, had 5G activated when this virus hit. Think 5G might create a few exosomes? If you had control of this electromagnetic grid, you could turn it off, you could turn it on, you could direct it wherever you want, you could kill a lot of people with it, and then say the people died from a virus. A thought to entertain, is it not? Hospitals may be filling up when 5G kicks in, and those who are tested could be tagged with COVID-19, when in fact it was their own body's exosomes fighting the outside killer attack. See Dr. Kaufman's video. Conclusion, let's be clear as to what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that because I entertain the thought that COVID is a fiction, that people are not going to die. I think that people will die, and perhaps many. I think as many will die as needed in order for the archons, these transgovernmental entities and personalities, to get what they want. These human beings won't be dying from a virus. They will die because they're murdered, possibly by 5G, and we will be told it was a virus, just like 9/11. People were murdered by those who blew up buildings, and the perps who owned the media told us it was a bunch of religious fanatics whose religion, conveniently, was Islam, commence bombing. Who are some of these trans-governmental entities and personalities? Look for the money. They want to keep it. They want more of it. Money is control. Look who's in the news a lot these days and portrayed as a great hero and humanitarian regarding this virus. Look who wants to roll out 5G all over the planet. Look at the richest of the rich. No government controls them. They control governments. Remember that nothing the media says about them can be trusted. COVID-19 is a fiction. Warriors needed. I'm a simple preacher. I'm saying something ain't right. People need to get off their knees and stand on their feet and research this quickly. Call me a conspiracy theorist or crazy if it feels good for you, but know where you are when you call me that. You are shut up in your house. You can't go to work. Your children aren't in school. You've lost your freedom to go to church or to the mosque or wherever you go. You can't protest anything your government is doing. You can't have a funeral for your dead mother. Your business is dead, although Amazon and Netflix will be doing well. You can't even go to the bar for a damn beer. All that, and you're not even sick. You call that normal? You call that a logical response to anything? Who's crazy? This is war. We're under attack. We need warriors. We need warriors like citizen journalists and citizen scientists and citizen truth seekers. God bless you. We need you to be louder than ever. I can't tell you what to do, but we don't have much time. The enemy is bringing the biggest weapons you can imagine to enslave you and your family. They will mess you up. You can live maybe on your knees or you can fight on your feet. The time is now. That was what I wrote in April. April what? 3rd. April 3rd, 2020. I don't know. Since then, I've entertained other ideas too. I mean, I had Kevin Barrett on last week, and he's 98% convinced that COVID initially was a bioattack by the U.S. deep state on China, and it was designed. Wasn't as, I don't know. Who knows? So there could be something there could have been something there. I'm with him. He's got some good evidence for that. Ron Unz report, Unz review. Is where he got that, is the chief maker of that hypothesis. But it doesn't, even that doesn't diminish the fact that this is engineered by archons, this lockdowns and all of this other stuff. Who knows? And you can get chased in rabbit holes and we can be divided over stuff. I'm not certain. I don't know. But I do know that we are under attack. And the bioweapon that is coming, is here, is the you-know-what. Roll up your sleeve, comrade. Who knows what that's going to do? Who knows what it's done? And the fact of the matter is, the main evidence that I have is the censorship. When they're not telling you the truth and when they're shutting up everybody's voice, you know something's wrong. Okay, the last thing I got is a poem. Not even a whimper. May 11th, 2020. T.S. Eliot's last stanza of his 98-stanza poem, Hollow Men, may be the most quoted of all of Eliot's poetry, says Wikipedia. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper. That's how I feel about our end, the end of humanity, which will happen before this decade ends unless there is a literal supernatural intervention. That's how I see it. They have destroyed us with fakery and deception. Humanity put on its mask, isolated, distanced, and decided that its basic rights and freedoms were selfish, and gave them up. Humanity denied everything that had at one time defined it, because they believed a lie so well crafted that they believed they were doing the right thing by doing what was against their very nature, what humans have done as long as they have been around. Humanity gave up its own power of healing that it had known since humanity began, allowing the clever powers to take it and tell humanity what was best for them. We allowed ourselves to be tricked. In Genesis, it was a trick by the serpent that started it all. The serpents who run this game are watching, waiting for their impeccable plan to run its course. No need to fire a shot, no need for tanks or martial law, no need for a bang. We submit with a whimper, perhaps not even that. The whimper won't come until it's far too late. Perhaps we will never whimper because we may never know that we were ever deceived. Maybe that will be a mercy. This is Freedom Loves Company. I'm John Shuck. Next week at 8 o'clock on Revolution Radio. Be well.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
You have been listening to Freedom Loves Company on ProgressiveSpirit.net. This broadcast originally aired live on Revolution Radio. It has been slightly edited for distribution to radio stations, including the Pacifica Radio Network. Catch Freedom Loves Company live every Sunday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Revolution.Radio Studio B. Find podcasts at ProgressiveSpirit.net and JohnShuck.com. I'm John Shuck. Be well.